Hello and welcome to Thoughtcast, the SPJIMR podcast, a conversation about business and leadership between a corporate head and an academic. Today, we have with us Mr. Amit Jain, Managing Director of the French cosmetic giant L'Oreal. Mr. Jain is the first Indian MD of the company since it entered India in 1991. Before this, Mr. Jain was the MD of Akzo Nobel for Western Europe, the world's largest paint company, and he has led MTV, Viacom, and Coca-Cola in India. He is a global leader with a deep understanding of India. In conversation with him today is Dr. Tulsi Jayakumar, Professor of Economics and Chairperson of the Family Managed Business Program at SPJIMR. A prolific writer and a fantastic teacher, Tulsi has a keen eye on Indian business. So here it is to you, Tulsi, to deep dive.
Thank you, Vinita. Thank you so much. And Amit, welcome on board. It's the first time for both of us. And I would like to start with asking you a question. I look at you, pun unintended, as the beautiful mind. So, a global leader who is into the beauty business, what are some of the childhood influences which have shaped you and your leadership style? So, what do you attribute your leadership style as, and what is it that has influenced that leadership style of yours?
Right. So thank you for that very generous introduction, Tulsi. And it's a pleasure to be on the SPJIMR platform. And this is truly innovative. So hats off to the entire team which is putting it together. Leadership style, personality, a lot of it is driven by the early growing up years and the kind of role models one has. So in my case, I grew up on air bases. My father is a retired Air Force officer. And where, the core values of serving the nation, pride in being an Indian, are some of the things which I used to see all around me. So, I grew up watching fighters taking off. I saw my father participate in 2 wars. And very importantly, moved across almost 9 locations in the country and outside the country, where everybody is an uncle and an auntie, regardless of caste, creed, color, ethnicity, because the one thing which binds everyone is national pride and patriotism. What that did really was really sow the seeds of appreciating diversity and huge tolerance for the differences between ourselves in such a diverse nation as India. And of course, adaptability. Every time we moved, every time you switch a school, a college, go to a dramatically different part of India. Those were some early learnings around adaptability. And then, of course, the role models. The role models were, people in service of the nation. Very clearly, I used to look up to my father, who rose up to be a very senior officer in the Air Force. And, those are the things which kind of help you shape your thinking around leadership. And, let me put out what this really means. I think the most ready example is, in my last assignment in Europe, where I was based out of Amsterdam, I was responsible for a business with diverse European countries, teams as diverse as Scandinavians from Sweden and Finland and Swiss, Italians, Germans, you name it. And there is nothing called Europe, right? None of them have this unique culture, and understanding that culture, adapting your leadership style to make allowances for how these various cultures operate is some of, the very unique lessons which I learned in my early growing up years. And I believe has held me in good stead as I move across geographies.
And I think the stint in AXO Amsterdam was particularly difficult because of the hostile takeover bid, as we read in the newspaper. So I'm sure that would have required a certain bit of patience, calmness, and the kind of grit and tenacity which comes with, I suppose, your early childhood years.
I think the word which comes to mind really is resilience.
Right.
Yeah, and since one has seen a lot of ups and downs in life through the various moves, and like I mentioned, there's nothing more intense than being exposed firsthand to a war. After that, things like corporate takeovers and such like kind of recede into the background. So, it gives you a lot of perspective. And with that kind of perspective, is not just in my case, but I would imagine there are a lot of Indian leaders across the globe. What they bring to the table is resilience after being through very, very uncertain environments, which we have here in India. I still remember just before Y2K, 1st January 2000, there was this expert team which came in. Used to work with Coca-Cola running a large business of bottling operations. So there was a team from Atlanta which came in, making us aware of all the problems with Y2K and how to prepare ourselves. So they were interviewing me on what are the events which we face. And when I took them through the various riots and the floods, and in those days, a recent terror attack at one of our plants in Andhra, I still remember this big burly Texan saying, "Hell, you go through Y2K every month. I have very little to tell you." So, it's really a question of what we're exposed to. And I think a lot of us Indians have had the advantage or disadvantage of being through such trying times.
Right, Amit. So we know that you started off your career in ICI and then went on to join Coke. Before you did a stint with media, so you were in paints and chemicals, went on to soft drinks, came to media, and then you went back again to Axo, which was really basically ICI back again, and then you've gone into L'Oreal. So a whole lot of very, very different businesses. So what is it that you would say is the mantra for business success? How can someone, just navigate so seamlessly from one industry into another and kind of head firms across industries?
Wow. So, I dare not simplify an answer and try to give one mantra which applies to business. I think that would be too presumptuous of me. But I could share a few reflections. So, what is common to all these moves is the fact that I stayed in the business of very large brands with big distribution, primarily serving the youth. That's what's common to the Coca-Cola, MTV, Viacom, now L'Oreal's of the world. So it has been the same domain largely in terms of consumers and customers, big distribution, big brands. And coincidentally, most of the brands I worked with were global leaders, but that was more of a coincidence than anything else. So, what has helped me navigate it? One, leadership is fungible. A leadership ethos which is fundamentally value based is something which traverses across industry verticals seamlessly. The second part of it is, I'm stating the obvious, but people always at the heart of what we do. So, huge focus on your teams, building the capability, building the culture, investing in people. People are smart. And when they see leaders invest in them, care for them, and not just mouth the platitudes, they get it. And I think that's something which has always, helped me steer the differences as I move across categories and industries. And most importantly, what I have realized, especially in highly competitive markets like India, is that it is critical to differentiate. Literally differentiate or die. And some of the examples which spring to mind is I had in the mid 2000s I just moved from Coca-Cola to MTV, which was a tiny media shop which wasn't doing very much, losing a bunch of money. And very quickly we realized that India at that time was a single TV household where everybody used to watch the same programming. And the MTV, VH1, Nickelodeon niche channels had a very small part to play. So we decided for the first time to launch a general entertainment channel with our JV partners and create a joint venture called Viacom 18. And everybody said, listen, you're from the beverage business of Coca-Cola, you don't understand. There's all these big GECs like Stasi, Sony, Sahara. You guys don't have a hope. But nonetheless, we went ahead and we launched a GEC with a difference, which was young and spunky, called Colors, which shows like Khatro Ke Khiladi, Big Boss, which within a couple of years made it the number 2 general entertainment channel in the country. Yeah, so that is a very, very simple example of differentiation. That is more on the proposition side of it. Then there's differentiation on pricing. I was a part of team, which I still remember. It was 1st January 2000. We decided to completely re-engineer the value chain of Coca-Cola and launched the 5 rupee Coca-Cola now with an iconic tagline called "Thanda Matlab Coca-Cola." It pretty much redefined the beverage market those days in India. So, in my experience, I've seen a lot of these great examples. Most recently, the sector in which I work in now, L'Oreal, which is the personal care beauty business, what Patanjali did 5 or 6 years back. Come in with natural products, with a great proposition of Swadeshi. That really struck a chord with Indians. So, tons of examples. I could go on and on, but I would definitely pick up differentiation, especially on the consumer side of business, as something which creates sustainable competitive advantage.
So that's a lovely thought. In fact, differentiation. But to me, what I could also take away was this whole concept of fungibility of leadership, Amit. And I think leaders like you kind of embody that the concept of fungibility itself. But alongside the business part of it comes the sustainability part, and that has become an increasingly important word which is being spoken about today. We may call it a buzzword, but then sustainability is the way in which businesses would have to go in the future. So how do you think should companies and businesses approach sustainability?
Wow. You've spoken about something which is very close to my heart. I grew up as a kid where my grandfather used to take me to national parks, which were around conservation of the tiger. So early lessons in sustainability were built into me as a preteen. So, sustainability, what does it mean for us? Very simply, we cannot borrow from the future to feed our today. So, what we have been doing for the last couple of generations now, and my generation is the biggest defaulter in this, is that we have been consuming the earth, its environments, its natural resources far faster than it can regenerate. So, we have become a generation which is used to overconsumption, and we have forgotten what it is to respect the earth and nature. And add to it what's happening in terms of economy, growing consumption, industrialization. India is looking at a disaster. I don't want to be alarmist, but look at a few of the facts. India ranks now 5th in the 2020 Global Climate Risk Index. I think all of us on this podcast know that India's got a serious water problem. We support 17% of the world's population with only 4% of the global water resources. So, more than half of us Indians face extreme high water stress. In fact, I remember reading a book which is forecasting water riots 10 years from now, or maybe even sooner than that. So, given this context, I think we have to now reverse this entire train of events which we have unleashed. So before I go into the companies, I'd like to talk about the fact that this is not the other guy's responsibility. Each one of us jointly and severally owe it to ourselves and our children to do something about this. Very importantly, there's this entire emerging body of thought around the impact which our diet has on agriculture, specifically livestock agriculture, which is one of the biggest defaulters on greenhouse gases and water consumption on Earth. So, let me share with you one of my favorite numbers. The production and the farming of livestock consumes 80% of the farmlands of the world, but contributes only to 18% of the food calories. So, the point which I am trying to arrive at over here is that our ancestors over the years predominantly had plant based diets. And the biggest contribution which we can make, I'm not saying that people turn vegan or vegetarian overnight, but over a period of time, if we can increase plant-based, vegetable, fruit-based diets, is great for our farmers, and more importantly, it's fantastic for our environment and sustainability. So I know this is slightly off the script in terms of your question, and let me quickly come to that in terms of what can corporates do. So yeah, I went off on one of my personal passions. But again, coming back to corporates, I think we have to embed sustainability in everything which we do. The situation is so alarming that if we cannot reverse what's happening to greenhouse gases and global warming in the next 7-8 years, it will be too late. It will become irreversible, the climate change.
So, a
So,
quick minute, because what you spoke about as your personal passion is something I'm able to so relate to. I'll just give you a quick anecdote on
mhm.
how is it that a business leader is able to change the way in which people behave. So, the example that I'm going to give you is that of the founder, the patriarch of the Jain irrigation systems. They had their plant, they had their operational unit in the US, where it was very difficult for them to get the workers to actually turn vegetarian or vegan. So, what they did was something a little out of the box. They decided to give all the people working in the factory vegetarian food, delicious Indian vegetarian food, all the days that they would come to work. So very simple ways in which they could, change the way in which people behave. So when we're looking at sustainability, I think what you're also talking about is how do you get people to do what is good for them and for the generations to come in the future. So as a leader and as a business manager, how would you want to look at driving home the point through kind of changing behavior?
Yeah. So, what a great example, Tulsi. Thank you for sharing that. And I can't help but violently agree. But, at the same time, I'd like to stress that it's about individual choices, and we have to be very, very tolerant about the difference in choices. My simple entreaty to the listeners is make that little bit of a difference. If plant is today 50% of your diet, can you make it 70%? Every little bit is going to make a difference. So, of course, your example is standout. And, in terms of coming back to the nub of your question, how do you change behavior?
Right.
So, at L'Oreal, most recently, we have unleashed a new initiative called L'Oreal for the Future, which is building on our existing 10-year sustainability program. And in this one, what we have done in terms of changing behavior is we have created a virtual sustainability organization throughout the company where all functions, all businesses without exception have a sustainability initiative. And now pretty much all senior managers double hat with a sustainability objective. And depending on what's relevant for their brand, so for Garnier, it is about being natural, afforestation, reclaiming wastelands, and it changes for each brand, of course. And similarly, the supply chain guys, they're trying to figure out how to cut down on carbon emissions from freight. The factories are figuring out how to quickly become zero waste and water neutral. So every single aspect, every single leader in the company now co-owns a sustainability objective. And that is how you create something which is, far reaching. And everybody, when they are evangelizing their aspect of sustainability over a period of time, you tend to get many, many more people, who tend to join the cause. So it's early days as yet, but I'd like to think that we have started on a journey which can be broad based over the years.
Lovely, Amit. I think that was a great example, and the words that you used, basically co-ownership and getting people to be evangelists of sustainability. I mean, which is going beyond just someone who practices sustainability but goes on to become an evangelist. That's a brilliant thought. You spoke about situational leadership and how you practice situational leadership. So, in the context of the post pandemic world, how do you think leadership will need to change to try and make sense of, I mean, the cliched new normal, but indeed it is going to require a very different kind of leadership. So, what are your thoughts about who should be the new leaders, or what is it that they should possess?
So again, there is no one size fits all response to this. But if I were to look at the sector of the business world which I work in, which is more consumer focused, I do believe that consumer centricity, greater than ever, and most importantly, agility around the changing consumer is going to be more and more important. So, what have we seen? We can keep talking about the pandemic and how hotels and restaurants have got impacted and airlines have almost got shut down. But if you were to look at it on an ongoing basis, we know that this is not going to just suddenly disappear the day vaccination is over. This is going to come in ebbs and flows. So, what's happening is the way consumers are looking at the decision making journey is evolving. Yeah. So, first, they have reprioritized categories. So, categories to do with wellness, good health, security, and safety of their families have suddenly got prioritized right on top. And you can see all the food companies reporting blazing results, double-digit growth, and 20s profit growth. People have prioritized, good eating, good food, etc., etc. So one is the category behavior. The second is how we shop. So in this VUCA world, the consumer is moving so quickly, and then everybody talks about digital transformation, but the reality is that the consumer is moving towards what we can say, slightly simplistically, to a low touch economy. And what does this mean? It means if I can, exercise some consumption behavior without getting out there and exposing myself or my family to risk, I rather exercise that option. So, for example, in the last year, we here at L'Oreal have figured out that giving the consumers the ability to try and test our products through what we call virtual try on technology, where now we have advanced face tracker algorithms that detect where your lips, your eyes, cheeks are, and it applies virtual cosmetics, color, and gives the user a touch and try personalized experience. So I believe personalization is going to be huge going forward, and similarly, the consumers need for knowing much more about the ingredients, the wellness quotient of whatever they're buying is something which is going to be really important. Advising consumers becomes very, very important now for brands. So, for example, we have a skincare brand called Kiehl's, where most of our Kiehl's customer representatives have become e-representatives, and now they are online, both text and voice, advising consumers on what their personalized needs are. And just to close on this, we have a huge body of work around what we do with hairdressers, where we train lakhs of hairdressers over the last many years. And now we have moved to an e model so that these hairdressers, from the safety of their home, can go for electronic education. And very importantly, now we facilitate them to reach the consumers through our platforms in terms of what we call conversational commerce, where they can actually advise the consumers on what their needs are. So these are just small examples of what is an emerging trend of a low touch economy where the consumer is changing how they look at purchase decisions, where they buy, how they buy, and hence the criticality of consumer centricity and building agility around keeping that connection with consumers and further strengthening it.
I think that's very good, and I think the way in which businesses are responding to the new normal is itself revealing. I think some of the other leaders that we are speaking to are also coming out with similar kinds of things. But you spoke about where the consumer will buy and how the consumer will buy, Amit. I have a slightly different thought out here. You know, we were reading, I was looking at some meme in, I think it was during the early days of the pandemic, where people were saying that instead of using cosmetics, people are going to be going in for more of body shaping because the face is going to be hidden by the mask. So that's on a slightly lighter note. But I just want to ask you this. The pandemic has kind of made people question a lot of things that they would normally do. And I think beauty is one very important part of it. I was reading somewhere again where one of the writers was speaking of how they have, in fact, dropped pants, dropped lenses, and everything else that you would want to associate with the idea of what one needs to look like in front of others. So, how relevant do you think the concept of beauty is going to be in the new world? And amidst all this, there are also other kinds of challenges in terms of we are all reading about the Black Lives Matter and all of those other campaigns which companies like L'Oreal and some of the other companies are facing. So, how do you think you need to look at and possibly even redefine beauty?
So, I'm going to strike a slightly contrarian note on this one, Tulsi,
Yes.
uh, because beauty is more than just looking good. Beauty gives us the confidence in who we are, who we want to be, how we want to relate to others. So, beauty is a much deeper sentiment than just the cosmeticity of it. So, the way we at L'Oreal think about it is beauty is eternal. It's one of the oldest businesses on earth, the business of looking good. In the Paleolithic era, man used to grind all kind of paste and adorn themselves with various kind of colors. So that's how old beauty is. And it's been with us for more than 1 lakh years and is going to be here for a long, long time. L'Oreal has been in this business for 110 years. So the way we are looking at it is our goal is offering each and every person around the world the best of beauty in terms of quality, efficacy, very importantly now safety and responsibility to satisfy the diverse beauty needs. You talked about Black Lives Matter. I think the diversity of this is very, very important. There is no one unified idea of beauty. Ultimately, beauty is about exactly what every single individual perceives their idea of beauty to be. So, yeah, the pandemic has sparked off many changes. Initially, we were kind of, to the example you used, with people wearing masks, we kind of anticipated the sale of lipstick is going to plunge and eye makeup is going to go up. But as we can see that consumers are very, very resilient and pretty much most of it is coming back in a hurry, though in a slightly different form, where now the wellness quotient, the grooming part of it is becoming really important. People have had time at home and they have invested in themselves. You must have seen a lot of our colleagues have started coming back to work much slimmer and fitter than before. We all thought that we'll become couch potatoes, but actually there's been a different kind of consumer behavior which has happened. So, using the same example, people have been investing in beauty and grooming. So, for example, the well groomed man is a concept which is growing very, very fast. So, globally, men's skincare is going through the roof. Here in India, the men's category, which is more in the protective care space, as opposed to color, etc., is really growing fast. We have seen this huge trend of various brands like Bombay Shaving Company, which was recently in the news, the Man Company, Usra, Beardo. You name the number of ventures which are coming up and growing in this space. That in itself will answer the point Ultimately, entrepreneurs do not come in lightly and sink their capital and effort if the sector doesn't have prospects. So I believe that self care, focusing on the self, is no longer seen as indulgence. And once again, L'Oreal is leading the way with consumers with its iconic tagline, which is because you're worth it.
Right.
I believe it's celebrating its 50th anniversary this year.
Great. I think I completely agree with you, Amit, on the point of people are wanting to invest in themselves because we're reading about it, we are seeing it also. I think the tendency, and probably, I don't know, as researchers and academics, we may have to do a little bit more of studying on that. That it is the age of possibly individualism, which has kind of resurfaced because people are wanting to look at themselves and especially when you kind of are faced with that uncertainty, you want to make sure that you're going to survive it by yourself. So that was very interesting, Amit. A final message for the budding business managers who are in here and who are listening into the podcast as well.
Okay, this is a simple one for me, huh? Invest in yourself. Taking on from your last line. So have a passion for learning and build a strong foundation. I say it with all my heart. But let's make this fun. One of my favorite movies is Three Idiots. I believe China's as well. Huh? It had a great run over there. And there was this iconic and very memorable line from Amir Khan, which goes, "Beta kabil bano kabil. कामयाबी तो साली झक मार के तुम्हारे पीछे आएगी." So I genuinely think that captures the essence of what it takes to build a strong foundation for your corporate careers. So I was very fortunate, early in my career, I had a string of great bosses, or maybe, I was just a bit of a pest and a nuisance where I used to reach out to them periodically and made sure that a lot of them were mentoring me. And some of those, well-known personalities have been on your other podcasts as well. And then, throughout my early days with Coca-Cola, whenever there was a tough assignment which nobody else wanted, which required a certain amount of risk taking or traveling to faraway places, I used to put up my hand. So net, I was fortunate enough to get a string of opportunities which were very, very diverse, and helped me go through pretty much most of the major functions and domains in the corporate sector. You name it, apart from the classical marketing, sales, HR, finance, purchase. I've even helped start a factory. So I think my message to all budding young corporate leaders and entrepreneurs is that yes, it is necessary to have short-term ambitions, but prepare for long-term careers. You're at the cusp of what is going to be, a 3-4 decade adventure. So invest in yourself. It is very, very important that you consider what you are learning. Do you have the opportunity to grow? And I'm repeating myself, build a foundation for yourself. So the easiest way to illustrate it is the difference between, a banyan tree and a papaya tree. A papaya tree grows really fast, but we know is fundamentally hollow inside, and a banyan tree takes forever. But guess when there's a big storm or a challenge, which is the tree which keels over first? So, very simply said, balance your ambitions with the desire for personal and professional growth. The world has changed more in the last 1 year than it has in the last 20. And your ability to retool, relearn is far more important than your next job title. If you build the right foundation, the right skill sets which differentiate you, it's going to give you many more career options. And then the difference won't be a few lakhs, but several times that.
Thanks, Amit. That was absolutely wonderful. Some great takeaways, which I think that are there for all of us. I think all of us who are here right now enjoyed it, and look forward to actually inviting you on campus very soon as we kind of open up.
Yeah, may I take this opportunity of wishing you and the SPJIMR team the very best and congratulate them for this very innovative medium. And I hope this really does well and passes on the wisdom which you have to impart to all your listeners. So I look forward to listening to your podcast in times to come.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. Thank you. And I'm so glad the both of you have, it is the first time for both of you to do this podcast, and how amazingly you've done this. Thank you so much. And bye for now. You were listening to SPJIMR's Thoughtcast, produced by Vinita Dwivedi, edited by Amulya, supported by Parth, Funny, Rishabh, and Kaushik. Thank you for listening.